Welcome to Marking the End Times. I'm Mark Hitchcock, and as always, it's great to be with you again to talk about end-time Bible prophecy as we await the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. On today's program, I want to talk about wars and rumors of wars, what Jesus predicted over 2,000 years ago. Jesus, in his final great sermon there on the Mount of Olives, overlooking the Temple Mount area in the city of Jerusalem, he gave a litany of signs that will portend his coming. And in Matthew chapter 24, verse 6 and 7, Jesus said, "You will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars, for nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom." And today we see exactly what Jesus predicted 2,000 years ago in Matthew 24. There are more and more wars and conflicts erupting everywhere and every day. And there's all kinds of rumors of wars or talks or threats of war across the world today. And that's what we want to talk about. I don't believe we're in a world war right now, but I believe our world is at war. And that's a great sign, I believe, that the coming of Christ is near. Now, before we get to that, back to that topic, we're going to go in a bit to the subscriber-only section. And some great questions today. One is, if the imminent return of Christ is in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, when it says the apostasy has to come first and the man of sin is revealed, does the Antichrist have to be revealed before the rapture? A great question. Another question, how does the current Pope fit into the last days? Is he the last Pope? And finally, could Pentecost and the Feast of Trumpets be bookends to the church age? Am I correct in saying Pentecost was the beginning of the church age? We'll talk about the Feast of Trumpets and its relationship to the rapture and the end of the church age. But again, what we want to talk about today is our world today is at war. Again, as I said a moment ago, we're not currently, I don't believe, in a world war, but we can say accurately that our world is at war. Just yesterday, reading the newspaper, I still read the newspaper online. I know that's probably kind of old-fashioned. A lot of people don't do that anymore, but I read our local newspaper online every day. And just in reading through our newspaper, it just struck me all the global hotspots and flashpoints that there are today. I mean, as we went through, I just saw article after article about all the places where there are ongoing wars and conflicts and rumors of wars. And it's not just in the newspapers. You see it online. You see it on all the cable news channels 24/7. So I just want to go through and just highlight in one news cycle what I saw that's going on in our world today. One article I read said there's 35 ongoing armed conflicts just on the continent of Africa. So just on the continent of Africa, there's 35 armed conflicts. We see every day all across the news, all the activity by Iran and its proxies or surrogates. Iran has formed what's called the axis of resistance. We've talked about this quite a bit in our videos about the Houthis and about Hezbollah, and there's various other groups active on Iran's behalf in Iraq and Syria. So it's this axis of resistance where there's just waves of attacks and reprisals. There have been 130 attacks by these Iranian proxies or this axis of resistance so far against U.S. bases in Syria and Iraq, 130 of them since the beginning or the middle of October. Iran had just a couple days ago launched a missile and drone attack in just a 24-hour period against three of its neighboring nations, Syria, Iraq, and Pakistan. So Iran is shooting missiles and sending drones into these nations. Now they're attacking Syria because ISIS now is active again, and ISIS is responsible for the bombs that went off that killed the people at the commemoration for the death of an Iranian general. Two ISIS terrorists blew themselves up there and killed over 100 people. Iran is firing into Iraq because they believe that there's an intelligence headquarters in northern Iraq by the Israeli Mossad. They've also fired into Pakistan because they believe there are terrorist groups against them that are holed up there in Pakistan. So the New York Times had a headline that said, Iranian strikes in Iraq, Syria, and Pakistan are inflaming regional tensions. Also, in the same newspaper that I read, Iranian missiles headed for Yemen, for the Houthis down there that are shooting at ships in the Red Sea. That was commandeered by the United States just a couple of days ago. There was a large billboard on the side of a building in Tehran, depicts Iranian missiles. And with writing in both Hebrew and Persian, it read, "Prepare your coffins." So here you have a huge missile, this painting on the side of a building in Tehran, and it's in Farsi, the Iranian language, but also in Hebrew. The side of this missile is written the words, "Prepare your coffins." So all this is happening also as Iran is on the cusp of the nuclear threshold. Iran's nuclear program has reached the point, this article said, that within 3 weeks, they'd be able to enrich enough uranium for 5 fission weapons. The same newspaper, all about the Israel-Gaza war. The same newspaper, an article about Yemen again, and the Houthis and the Red Sea. The US, the UK, and Australia have been hitting targets in Yemen. So you can just see all the nations that are involved that I've mentioned already. You got Israel and Gaza, you got Iran, you've got Iraq, you've got Syria, you've got Pakistan, you've got the United States, the UK, Australia. We have China's threat to Taiwan. Taiwan just had their elections. They elected someone who's very anti-China and any kind of reunification. 18 Air Force planes from China were operating in and around Taiwan. Again, Jesus said there'll be wars and rumors of wars, these constant threats of war. Another place is North Korea. The Wall Street Journal has an article that says Kim Jong-un, he's the leader of North Korea, has a new enemy number 1, and it isn't the United States. North Korea says it will rewrite its constitution, casting South Korea as a hostile nation, breaking its policy of seeking peaceful reunification. So the leader of North Korea has canceled any hope of reunification and reconciliation with South Korea. So the Korean Peninsula right now is more dangerous than any time since 1950 and the Korean War. There's an article in France 24 that says North Korea formally abolishes government agencies working for cooperation with the South. News Nation has a headline that says North Korea could be preparing for war, experts warn. So North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Monday vowed to remove a massive monument to the possible reunification of the Korean Peninsula. It was finished, this great monument, in 2001. It's 9 stories tall. It's called the Monument to the Three Charters. And so he says that monument's an eyesore and he wants to have it torn down. It was built by his father and grandfather who had some idea of a reunification eventually with the South. But he declared this: we should completely remove this eyesore, this monument to the three charters for national reunification, and take other measures so as to completely eliminate concepts of reunification, reconciliation, and fellow countrymen from the national history of our republic. So that's over. Now South Korea is North Korea's number one enemy. Also, North Korea has been very active, according to an article by CNN, firing hundreds of artillery rounds into waters near a disputed border between North and South Korea, and testing what it said was a ballistic missile topped with a hypersonic glide vehicle. One of Russia's main envoys now is in North Korea. Russia's trying to get weapons from North Korea to help them prosecute their war against Ukraine. And by the way, mentioning Russia, the Russia-Ukraine war has now entered its third calendar year. Day 700 of that war is just a few days away. Newsweek this week has an article. Putin ally says World War III will definitely begin soon in the Middle East. Russians are joining the military in Russia at the rate of 30,000 a month because they can get paid more there than they can in any other job because of their economy. Fox News had an article this week. Again, this was in the paper that I read, and it says this: Germany is preparing for Russia to start World War III. Leaked plan reveals. Let me just read a little bit of it. Germany believes that Russia may provoke World War III very soon. And they've got this whole scenario laid out. It says Russian President Vladimir Putin could be preparing for an attack against NATO allies next year. which leaked German Ministry of Defense documents outline. The potential scenario outlines how Russia could start waging war in the Baltics in July. It would be this coming July, by using severe cyber attacks while stirring up discontent among Russian nationals in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. By September, those clashes could be used by Russia as an excuse to unleash Zapad 2024, a large-scale military exercise that would amass 50,000 Russian soldiers in the west of the country and in Belarus. And it just goes on to talk about what would happen next December. A worst-case scenario, Russia could take advantage of the transition period in the U.S. elections and use propaganda proclaiming fictional border conflicts or riots to incite violence and sow unrest. A key part of the plan could be to capitalize on wavering U.S. support for Ukraine. Then he goes on to say, following a meeting of the UN Security Council in January 2025, Russia could falsely accuse Western allies of plotting to move against Putin's regime, which he could use to rally troops to Belarus and the Baltics by March of 2025. The leaked document also said that in this scenario, 30,000 German troops would be deployed for defense, while an estimated 70,000 Russian forces would have amassed in Belarus. And then the final thing is, by May 2025, that buildup could prompt NATO to enact measures for credible deterrence to prevent further Russian incursion, which translates to combat between Western troops and Russian forces. Now, that would be World War III. Now, of course, that scenario is speculation at this point, but Germany is actively preparing for that contingency. And there's a lot of detail there. Now, again, we're not there yet. It's not World War III. It's not a world war at all. But it's clear that our world today is at war. Again, that's just all of that in one news cycle, just in one day that I came across. Now, let me remind you again, though, of what Jesus said in Matthew 24, verse 6 and 7. When I read it the first time at the beginning of the program, I left out a one sentence. I want to reread it and put that in there. Jesus said this, "You will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars." Listen to these words. "See to it that you're not alarmed, for those things must take place, and that is not yet the end." I love that. Jesus said, look, you're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you're not alarmed, you're not afraid, for those things have to take place. It's not yet the end. So Jesus told us this was coming, but he said, don't be alarmed. He wanted us to know this so that we could be aware and be alert and be anticipating the rapture and living our life in light of that day. And I hope that's what you're doing as we await the coming of Jesus Christ. Well, we're going to go now to the subscriber section, answer those three questions that I mentioned earlier. If you're not a subscriber and you'd like to be, and I want to encourage you to do that, you can go to endtimes.com and sign up there for $7 a month and have access to a lot of great information, a lot of programs we'll be bringing this year. Just from what I've told you today, all these things that are happening, just going to continue to build, and we'll keep you informed as best we can about these signs of the times. We'll go now to our subscriber-only section and answer these questions.